In the 7th year of marriage, Lance's research team welcomed a new member. I recognized her. She was the brilliant senior from our university days. He started coming home late, spending every day in the lab. The few words we exchanged were all about Ashley. He didn't let me bother him, and every time he picked up the phone, he impatiently said, "Can't you wait a bit? The experiment is almost done." It wasn't until I visited the lab that I saw them feeding each other, behaving intimately. I finally understood, after a 10-year relationship, it was coming to an end. Chapter 1. I stared at the clock. It was already midnight. He hadn't come back yet, so I couldn't help but pick up the phone and call him. After a while, the call connected. A clear female voice answered the phone. "The student just went to the bathroom." "What's up?" I hesitated with the phone in my hand. Lance had a serious germ phobia. Even with me, he rarely let me touch his phone, let alone a stranger. I held my patience. "Who are you?" "I'm part of his team." He gave me his phone to hold on to while he went to the bathroom. At this moment, there was a commotion on the other end, sounding nothing like a lab. "Student, your phone," the voice on the other end said, and Lance's murmuring voice could be heard. "It's Mary, I forgot to tell her." After that, he picked up the phone, apologizing as he spoke. "Mary, are you still awake? Go to bed soon, I'll be back later." How could I sleep? I tried to ask him where he was. "Where are you?" He chuckled. "I'm at the KTV. By the way, let me introduce you to someone. The girl who answered the phone earlier is a senior from our school." Seemingly emphasizing on purpose, he added. "She's the girl who could never beat me but always managed to surpass you." A disdainful voice came from the other end. "Humph, if we were to compete again, you wouldn't stand a chance." "Hee, if we really did it again, I wouldn't mind going easy on you." "Who asked you to take it easy? Otherwise, how could you have possibly beaten me? Right now, you're just working under me, senior, just accept it, losing to a junior isn't embarrassing." I listened to their flirtatious banter on the phone, as if completely forgetting my presence. My vision had already blurred, so I reached out and hung up the phone. It seemed like tonight, there was no need to wait for him. Now that I think about it, I've been watching Lance for nearly 20 years. He was very competitive, not allowing anyone to surpass him. In any exam, he was always first. But now, he was saying he was willing to go easy. I had once seen him get second place in the whole school, and he cried all afternoon. Indeed, people do change. There was one thing he said right: Ashley always managed to outdo me. The best time was when Lance got first place in the whole school, Ashley got second, and I got third. But what he didn't know was that Ashley's initial grades were at the bottom of the class until she fell for Lance and started excelling. Because she knew very well, in order to win the favor of this genius, good grades were indispensable. A bitter smile crept onto my lips. And how would he know, for his so-called first place, how much I had sacrificed? Chapter 2. The morning sun pierced my eyes. Out of habit, I reached out to touch the pillow beside me. Only then did I realize it was empty. The layout and furnishings were exactly the same as last night. Could it be that he didn't come home yesterday? At that moment, the door opened. Lance, looking exhausted, glanced at me. "Sorry for waking you up." I didn't say anything. Perhaps I should have made a scene, but it didn't seem worth it. He explained to himself. "We finished drinking with them yesterday, and it was already 3 a.m. I slept in the private room. Sorry, I should have told you, but your phone was unanswered, and Ashley said you were probably asleep, asking me not to disturb you." He seemed like a stranger to me now, and in the calmest tone, I spoke. "You used to come home every day at 7 sharp, and no matter how many times your colleagues called, you never went to a KTV. How come, now that she's here, you've changed? You even let her hold the phone you never let anyone touch. What exactly do you want?" He quickly shook his head. "Ashley isn't a stranger, she's our university classmate, have you forgotten?" I shook my head. Otherwise, how could a genius's thought process be different from ours ordinary folk? I understood what he meant. Because Ashley was a classmate, he was willing to go to the KTV to celebrate for her this time, welcoming her to join the same research team. Because Ashley was a classmate, he was willing to let her take care of his personal belongings that he never let anyone touch. In the words and between the lines, there was a favoritism he failed to notice. A favoritism that he used to only show me. Perhaps he had never realized until now why I was angry, what he had done wrong. With your current brain power, you might not necessarily outperform her. I taunted with a smile. Initially resembling a child caught in the act, upon hearing my words, he was once again ignited with a competitive spirit. Nonsense. Whenever it is, I am always first. Ashley does indeed have strong learning abilities and works diligently, but I am confident I won't lose. I stared calmly at him, although unseen to him, my teeth had long been clenched together, my hand hidden under the covers also tightly gripped. His mind seemed clouded by something, unable to withstand even a casual probing question, he couldn't see it. Just then, his phone rang, a unique ringtone I had never heard before. Hello? What? I got it, let Ashley operate the equipment first, I'll rush back immediately. Subsequently, he quickly glanced at me. Sorry, there's an issue with equipment worth millions, I have to rush back. We'll talk later. And he hurried out. I rubbed my temples. Did he truly not notice? His words were filled with trust and favoritism towards Ashley. But as a newcomer, what right did she have to operate such complex equipment? In the lab, there were his former mentors, friends he had worked with for a long time, were their technical skills inferior to that of a newcomer? I was already beginning to feel weary of this relationship. Chapter 3. A day later, his social media updated. As I saw it, I took out our marriage certificate thoughtfully. The key wasn't the caption but the accompanying photo. Thanks to everyone's efforts, we finally solved the problem, and this is also thanks to you, long-lost friend at Ashley. The photo was taken in Sonia. I had always wanted to go there to see the sea, and I had mentioned it to him many times. Since university, I had shown a great liking for the sea. But after a decade of being together, he had only taken me once when he proposed. After that, he buried himself in the lab, with valid reasons. No matter how much I waited, I never got to experience the so-called vacations he promised. He would always say, "How can I accompany you to the sea when I'm serving the country?" He used to be a workaholic, a good family man, always coming home promptly at 7 p.m. no matter how busy he was. But now, serving the country had turned into serving the country. I don't know if the experiment he always talked about can still succeed. All I know is, we are about to fail. I immediately took out my phone and sent him a text. After 10 years, it's over. Then I blocked all his contacts, planning to break up now. To avoid unnecessary entanglements later, after 10 years of being in love, maybe today I finally see his true colors. I looked at the house we had lived in for 3 years. The instructions from my parents before they passed away were still fresh in my mind. They saw me successfully graduate from university, get married, and finally let go peacefully. The remaining savings were used for the wedding and the house. Lance's parents passed away, and even the money for his university education was mostly funded by me. Looking back now, I truly wasted my entire youth impartially. Chapter 4. When Lance heard that I wanted a divorce, he rushed back overnight. What do you mean? I've done so much for you, and now you just don't want me? His eyes filled with deep blame. As if I was the one who did something wrong. I looked up at him. Don't push it. We are done. Lance chuckled. What on earth are you talking about? I've explained the KTV incident, haven't I? I smiled. Why were you and Sonia? Lance suddenly stopped, as if remembering something, hurriedly said, "It's a misunderstanding. The director saw how hard we were working, plus the research equipment needed maintenance, so he approved a 7-day vacation for us. I thought of taking them to relax." I looked at him, smiled, and tears welled up in my eyes. Taking them to relax? They have families, businesses, children. You don't need to take them to relax, right? Lance. I have nothing. Lance stood still, opened his mouth several times, but couldn't bring himself to tell the truth. Seeing him like this, I decided to speak for him. Is it because Ashley wanted you to go? Do you know why she insisted on going to Sonia? Lance frowned, staring at me intently. Tears were already falling uncontrollably, and I spoke slowly. Because she knew I wanted to go. Lance shook his head. Impossible, you're overthinking it, Mary. Ashley is not that kind of person. Are you trying to make me jealous on purpose and bring up divorce with me? It's ridiculous. These are all your speculations. She told me herself, she doesn't want to ruin anyone's family. Listening to him say this, I was truly exhausted. You can't wake up a person pretending to sleep. I grabbed a pillow and slammed it on the bed, shouting, she is ruining it now. I don't need to say anything else. Just tell me, did she ask you to go? Lance fell silent for a moment, then nodded. I wiped away a few tears and heard him continue, stop making a fuss. Even if she said so, it doesn't prove anything. These are all your speculations. Let's go see a psychologist another day. Don't be suspicious anymore, there's nothing between me and her. I desperately held back my tears, the words stuck in my throat. I still have work in the lab, enough, stop it, I'm not getting a divorce. After saying that, Lance slammed the door and left. The loud noise of the door closing made my eardrums ache. But what hurt even more was my heart. I never imagined that one day we would end up like this. Perhaps he had long forgotten how much I had sacrificed for him. Chapter 5. I drifted off to sleep, as if dreaming of our high school days. Back then, Lance's grades weren't that great. On the other hand, I always excelled in exams. Not long after, he came to me for tutoring. Because we had known each other since childhood and I had a good impression of him, I agreed without hesitation. His grades started to improve rapidly. On the day before the college entrance exam, he found me and confessed his feelings. After a brief moment of thought, I agreed. I thought maybe we could attend the same university and eventually be assigned to the same unit after graduation. At that time, that kind of life seemed really nice. After the exams, I got into B University as the third in the country, and he was a bit behind me, ranking 20th nationally. But in fact, it was just a few points difference. After university, I don't know when it started, his competitiveness began to rise. Every exam, he had to compete with me. After being beaten by me in 3 exams, he started to come to me in a panic. Questioning, why can't I ever beat you in exams? Could it be that you held back some tips when you taught me study methods? I was very angry, looking at my boyfriend in front of me, my heart ached for the first time. You know what, can you also get a job? It's too tiring to study and work at the same time. It would be great if you could help me. I furrowed my brows, perhaps I was still too young at that time, only thinking about sharing hardships with him, but never considering if he was truly worth entrusting my lifetime to. The next day, I started working part-time during my spare time, earning a huge amount of living expenses. My grades also began to decline at this time. On the day before the exam, he excitedly found me. This time, I will definitely beat you. I smiled. Wishing you success. Actually, I didn't care at all who did well in exams and who didn't. Since he, an orphan, wanted to be strong, I was willing to help him. I deliberately answered a few questions wrong, just to let him win by 1 point, securing the first place. I found him, ready to congratulate him. But he looked at me anxiously. Mary, can you handle my work during your shifts too? It was so hard to finally get first place, I'm afraid my grades will drop. All the prepared words stuck in my throat, I couldn't say them no matter what. I just asked him with red eyes. And what about you? He ignored me, smiling. As for me, I'll focus on studying, get a good job in the future to take care of you. I found it hard to believe. You, a man, want me to work 2 jobs while you focus on studying? He didn't hesitate to reply, what's the big deal, we're in this together, right? Who cares who does what, just help me out. In 2 years, it'll all be over. Perhaps, our relationship had already started to have problems at this point. Now I realize, after all these years, the one always giving is me. Whether it's emotionally or financially. Even after giving so much, he still goes and has an affair. I've had enough. I won't tolerate it anymore, they must pay the price. Chapter 6. Suddenly awakened from a nightmare. I looked around, thankfully it was just a dream. I really don't want to go through that again. At that moment, my phone rang. It was my college best friend. Mary, do you suspect Lance of cheating? I frowned. Who told you that? My friend sighed and said, you have to trust your husband, after all, he's the one you chose yourself. He just called me, heartbroken, asking me to talk some sense into you. Stop overthinking, he's a researcher, what trouble could he possibly get into? I hung up, finally some peace in the world. But then, another text from my friend came through. You're being too hasty, you'll regret it. I felt annoyed to the core, staring at the message, thinking of an old saying, never thought it would apply to me in the end. I replied, don't advise others without enduring their suffering. My friend didn't send any more messages. Thinking about Lance, I decided to visit his lab. I thought to myself, he better swallow his pride and divorce me straightforwardly. I've given up on the marriage, trying to make them happy, what else do they want from me? If this can't satisfy me, then don't blame me for being rude. I hailed a taxi and headed to his lab. I arrived quickly. I pushed the door open and walked in. Perhaps it was bad timing, as it was lunchtime. A few colleagues recognized me. Mary, you're here, Lance is in the cafeteria. Thank you. I nodded. Passing by the cafeteria's large glass window, I looked inside. Lance and Ashley were sitting side by side at the same table. They were affectionate, laughing and chatting with each other. Ashley glanced around and suddenly spotted me. Coincidentally, I also wanted to confirm if she was indeed trying to wreck someone else's family. Does that sense of self-esteem, being a genius, really exist? She sarcastically smiled at me. Without hesitation, she turned to Lance. Lance, I want some shredded potatoes, can you pass me some? Everyone knew how much of a germaphobe Lance was. He was the only one in the cafeteria using disposable chopsticks. For a moment, there was a brief awkward silence in the air. But the next second, Lance smiled. Sure, let's eat together. He even considerately pushed the lunchbox towards Ashley. Ashley turned back and gave me a smile. I understood. My suspicions were correct, Ashley was nothing like what Lance thought. She was someone who knew no boundaries, fully aware the other person was married, yet willingly becoming the third party. Following that, their actions became even more audacious. Ashley picked up a piece of beef. Lance, let me feed you. This time, even I doubted if Lance would eat it. It was no longer just feeding someone, it was about whether a germaphobe would compromise his principles for love. Lance fell into a momentary silence, then opened his mouth and swallowed the food. Thank you, it's delicious. If a psychologist saw this scene, they would surely call it a miracle. Someone who wouldn't let others touch even his phone, actually eating food fed by someone else. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, so I turned and walked away. My bag accidentally hit the glass, creating a loud noise. People in the cafeteria suddenly looked over. He must have noticed me, immediately got up and followed me outside. He hurriedly grabbed my hand, his face showing panic. Mary, why did you come without saying anything? I raised my eyebrows, staring at him. If I had said something, would I have witnessed this medical miracle? Lance, what about your germophobia? Lance was speechless, unable to say a word. I reached out, touched the wall, then directly touched his face. Lance took 2 steps back abruptly, touching the spot on his face where I had just touched. At that moment, I found it all so ridiculous. Oh, so your germophobia is still there, I remarked. Lance remained silent, quickly rushing into the bathroom. I followed him into the bathroom. I saw him frantically washing the spot on his face that I had touched. I was both angry and amused. I touched it, how dirty must it be? Did you clean it well with soap? Or should I buy you a bottle of Mr. Muscle? Or maybe sandpaper would be more suitable? Suddenly, with great force, Ashley pushed me aside, looking at Lance with concern. Lance, how are you feeling? Lance was busy washing his face, too preoccupied to respond to her question. Instead, she turned her focus on me. You're his wife, knowing about his germophobia, yet treating him like that? A crowd gathered around, pointing and whispering about me. I chuckled, staring at Ashley. Don't you know too? Not only do you know about his germophobia, but you also know he has a wife. So, what's the deal? Is the beef delicious, Lance? Realizing his predicament, Lance washed his face about a dozen times and decided that was enough, turning off the tap. Enough! Why are you all just standing here? Get back to work! He commanded, dispersing the crowd before turning to me. Sorry. That was the first human word I had heard from him in days. And then? I asked indifferently, the thick love that once existed now completely vanished. Besides divorce, I had no other thoughts. He took a deep breath. What else do you want? I've already apologized, haven't I? I furrowed my brow, wondering how shameless one had to be to act so self-righteously. Ashley chimed in from the side. Lance, I think I understand now. This woman doesn't love you at all. If she truly loved you, how could she bear to see you compromise your dignity to apologize? You should think it over sooner rather than later. Such a woman is not worth it. There will be better ones in the future. I didn't hesitate to slap her directly across the face. Ashley held her face, tears welling up in her eyes. How can you hit someone? She exclaimed, shocked. The original video of the first wife hitting the mistress, is it rare these days? I could have really hit her, but I felt it was unnecessary and slowly lowered my hand. Maybe in the past, I was blind. But these past few days, I saw right through Lance's character. Ashley is relentlessly pushing, she will regret it sooner or later. I turned to stare at Lance. You've already cheated, I can take you to court unless you sign the divorce agreement now. Lance stared at me intensely. Do you have to make it difficult for me here? All these years of feelings, you say you don't want them anymore? Always making a mountain out of a molehill, causing trouble. I'll say it again, there's nothing between me and Ashley, just colleagues. I was furious. Fine, then fire her, don't keep hovering around me, you might not be bothered, but I am. You don't have germophobia, I do. Lance was shocked. What did she do to provoke you? Just because she wanted to go to Sonia, is that it? Can't you stop being so unreasonable? Enough is enough, I never thought you would be this kind of woman. Go home and calm down, the 10 years of love for you are like a joke, the Mary in my memory is not like this. With that, he turned and walked away. After he left, Ashley smirked. What era is it? Still talking about mistresses? Lance is a PhD at the National Laboratory, and you're just a housewife, don't you think you don't match up to him? I advise you to leave early, after all, you can't compete with me. I rubbed my forehead, feeling a bit at a loss facing the sarcasm of these two despicable people. Are you blind? Can't you see I've been talking about divorce all along? Ashley laughed. That's Lance giving you a chance because of your 10 years of relationship. Believe it or not, I can make you divorce immediately. I swear, this was the only humane thing Ashley had ever said in her life. She naively thought Lance was so great, but sooner or later, she would wake up. Seeing her like this, it was true that she had a way, but she hadn't made up her mind yet. I decided to help her. I gave her a sarcastic smile, walked straight up to her, I was about 5 centimeters taller than her, looking down at her. Whether I divorce him or not, you will always be just a mistress, forever inferior. I was originally going to expose you two despicable people directly, but since you are so confident about divorce, I'll give you 3 days. If Lance doesn't find me to talk about divorce within 3 days, get ready to be in the news. After the sarcastic remarks, I turned around and walked away. Ashley, infuriated, shouted from behind, "You despicable woman, serves you right for being unwanted. Wait and see. Within 3 days, I'll have him kick you to the curb." Turning the corner, I couldn't help but chuckle in a secluded spot. Threatening exposure was just talk, I had a more malicious plan in mind. Just a small jab at her, but she took the bait and got angry. What a genius, not? Chapter 7. I must admit, Ashley was quite efficient. The next day, I received a text message from Ashley. At noon, meet me at Dongting Lake. This time, I'll make you eat your words. I chuckled, deleted the message, took out my phone card, tore it in half, and tossed it in the trash. I quietly waited until 11:30, then got up, hailed a taxi, and arrived at Dongting Lake. I immediately spotted Ashley and Lance in the crowd. My parents don't want me anymore, I don't want to live. With that, Ashley once again rushed towards the lake. Watching this drama unfold was incredibly awkward. But surprisingly, Lance handled it very well. No. Ashley, don't. I calmly minded my own business, watching their performance. Ashley spotted me in the crowd and gave me a glance before continuing her act. I took out 5 phone cards I had bought in advance and randomly swapped one out. I dialed the emergency number. There's someone attempting suicide at Dongting Lake. Taking out the phone card, tearing it in half, and tossing it aside, I replaced it with another one and made an anonymous tip to the news agency. After that call, I tore the card in half again, replaced it with a new one, and dialed my best friend. Ashley invited me to Dongting Lake. I'm scared. Can you come with me? What? What is she up to? Hang on, I'll be right there. I switched to a new card and called a colleague at the research institute. Ashley said Lance wants to jump into the lake. Hurry to Dongting Lake to save him. What the heck? Is this for real? I was wondering why he rushed out today. I'm getting a ride over there with some people. The last call was to the lawyer, asking him to bring a camera and come to the scene. After all that, I tore up 4 cards, keeping the one for my best friend, and sat indifferently on a bench, watching this drama unfold. How could I possibly let you off the hook like this? After all the chaos, I just wanted to leave. Dream on. Chapter 8. Ashley lost her footing and fell straight into the lake, crying bitterly. No one wants me, no one likes me, I really don't want to live. Lance panicked and jumped in to stabilize Ashley. Don't say that, everyone at the research institute loves you. Meanwhile, the people I called had all arrived at the scene, and the lawyer quietly came to my side. Capture all of this on camera, make sure it's clear. The lawyer nodded and raised the camcorder. The newspaper crew rushed to the lake, attempting to record the scene, aiming for the headline news. My silly best friend, who I had summoned as a witness, and my colleagues from the research institute arrived as well, looking puzzled as they gazed towards the lake, seeming to realize something and hurrying over. Ashley was desperate, refusing to come ashore. Lance was getting desperate. I love you. Even if the whole world doesn't love you, I do. I will treat you well in the future. Please don't die, I have no idea how I would go on living in this world without you. This scene was captured in detail by my best friend, the newspaper crew, colleagues from the research institute, and the lawyer. Onlookers began to cheer and shout in support. A hint of sarcasm crossed my face, truly ignorant. Is that so? Ashley wore a triumphant smile, attempting to find me in the crowd. At this moment, as the victim, I received a call from my best friend. Come quickly, where are you? Something big is happening. Your husband is about to be taken by a mistress. I pretended to look shocked. What? No way. Then I twisted open a bottle of mineral water, dabbed a bit near my eyes, and rubbed my eye sockets hard. Everyone saw me, red-eyed and heartbroken, appearing at the lake. My best friend grabbed my hand upon seeing me, turned to the 2 people in the lake, and cursed loudly. Shame on you 2 heartless scoundrels. Beasts, cheating in marriage, you deserve a wretched end. The newspaper camera immediately focused on me. In a broken-hearted tone, I spoke up. Lance, didn't you say you would love me forever? Lance had already frozen in the water, and even Ashley realized something was wrong. Why was someone holding a camera here? Coming to her senses, Ashley turned pale. No, that's not how it is. Her explanation was so pale, how could it be useful? The onlookers at the scene had already snapped out of their shock, turning around to angrily scold the 2 people in the lake. I ran away from the scene in tears, and this whole scene was recorded completely. The police car slowly arrived. I wiped away the water stain from the corner of my eye, a smile tugging at my lips. The lawyer walked slowly to my side. Madam, I have recorded all the evidence. No matter who the opposing lawyer is, I am 100% confident that we will win. The $200,000 has been transferred to your account. A smile appeared on the lawyer's face. I am honored. I turned to him with a smile on my face. After taking my money, you must keep silent. Your evidence is also in my hands. The lawyer nodded. Don't worry, in our profession, the worst thing is leaking information. Besides, I really don't want to offend someone like you. I turned and left, waiting for the upcoming storm to fully ferment. A national scientific researcher cheating within marriage, exposed on the spot. This topic will attract a large number of onlookers no matter what era it is. This level of exposure is enough to leave the two of them with nowhere to hide. Chapter 9. I took a car back home, unable to hold back the flood of tears. Ending a 10-year relationship in this way, I couldn't bear it. But to let them hurt me like this, and then just walk away, I was even more unwilling. In the blink of an eye, I had become the person I hated the most. I cried hard, tears flowing endlessly. My best friend caught up with me. As soon as she opened the door and saw me crying, she thought I was upset over Lance. She sighed and patted my back. "Mary, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made that call that day." I shook my head while crying. I wasn't upset over these people at all. It was for myself. I just hated that I had been so blind. Only realizing when nearing 30. "I want to be alone for a while." My best friend nodded. "If you need anything, just call me. By the way, did you change your phone number?" I nodded. "Don't worry, I remember your number. I will call you when the time comes." With that, my best friend left feeling reassured. As I watched her disappear completely, I sighed quietly to myself. Perhaps people like her were the ones who truly found happiness. It's hard to genuinely laugh from the heart when your intelligence is high. I wiped away my tears, feeling like it was time to wrap things up. Taking out my phone, I sent a text message. "Where are they now?" "They are on their way to you, estimated to arrive in 10 minutes. Chapter 10. I sat quietly in the living room, waiting. Suddenly, I heard the sound of the elevator, and I dialed the emergency number on my phone. Putting on gloves, I overturned the table, pulled down the television, and completely flipped over the neatly arranged bookshelf. I grabbed a few cups from the table and violently smashed them on the floor, shattering them into pieces. Then, gritting my teeth, I punched myself hard in the nose, causing blood to flow immediately. Just then, the two figures appeared at the door. Seeing my messy house and the blood streaming down my face, Lance couldn't react, his anger freezing on his face as he stared. "What's happening? Is someone robbing us? Where did he run off to?" I got up, tears in my eyes, and went up to Lance, deliberately staining his hand with my blood. Ashley's expression changed constantly, and unless she was a fool, she should have realized by now that she had been completely played by me. Within a few seconds, Ashley pushed me away, her face turning pale. No, Lance, we need to leave." As soon as she said that, the sound of the police car could be heard. I sat back on the sofa nonchalantly, wiping the blood from my nose. Ashley was frantic, urging Lance like a person on a hot plate. "Let's go! Hurry! We're running out of time." Lance realized what was happening, looking at the blood on his hands and clothes, his face turning cold. He turned to Ashley. "It's too late, as long as she identifies me, running to the ends of the earth won't help." Then he turned to me. "Are you this ruthless? You can't stand to see me do well? Mary, you're a freak." I glanced at him. "Don't worry, the sentence won't be long. At most, your doctoral degree will be revoked, and some of your assets will be confiscated to compensate me, that's all." Lance visibly panicked, immediately dropping to his knees, his eyes red and teary. "I'm sorry, Mary, I was wrong, I really was wrong. Please forgive me, we had 10 years of relationship. Do you have the heart for it?" I stared at him intently. "Answer my question, if you answer well, I will consider." He nodded frantically. "Why did you take her to Sonia?" Lance opened his mouth, sighed. "Because I like her. I think she's also a genius, and we get along well." I laughed in anger. "Why did you eat the food she cooked?" Lance gritted his teeth. "Because I didn't find her dirty." I closed my eyes and asked him the last question. "When did you start liking her?" Lance remained silent on this question. Losing my patience, and knowing the police were only minutes away. "Speak!" Lance clenched his teeth. "During college." I fell completely silent, turned back, and laughed mockingly. "You are truly sentimental, why didn't you tell me back then? If you had, with my character, I would have definitely stepped back, just thinking I was blind." Why hide it until today? Lance shook his head. I owe you too much. I shouldn't have betrayed you. Whether in the past or now, I should not have betrayed you. I'm really sorry, I couldn't control myself. Ashley was moved to tears, feeling that these words made it worth it. But she underestimated this man. In the next moment, Lance turned to Ashley and said, I have loved you for so many years. Please help me. Can you take the blame for me? I can bail you out later, I can't lose my doctoral degree. Chapter 11. Ashley's steps towards him suddenly halted. Tears were still falling beside her eyes. However, this time it wasn't tears of excitement. She looked at Lance in shock, her face filled with disbelief. I coldly lowered my head. These scenes, haven't they happened to me before? He was someone who could share joy but not endure hardship. You understand too late, Ashley. The fiery pit I avoided when I woke up suddenly, you jumped into it desperately, now it's the most fitting ending for you. Ashley was in tears, constantly retreating, her eyes wide with astonishment. Lance knew time was running out, so he hurriedly spoke. Say something. Ashley, I have loved you for so many years, can you bear to send me to jail? Say something. Ashley turned to me, I could even see the tears flying off as she shook her head. You knew all along, didn't you? You knew he was like this, right? I looked at her indifferently. I warned you. Twice. Ashley gritted her teeth fiercely. I'm so fed up, I'm done. I'm so damn done. Mary, you did the right thing. I'm sorry, really sorry, the dumbest thing I did was to compete with you, I regret it. What do I need to do to get him a longer sentence? I sadly shook my head. Just cooperate with the police, answered truthfully. The scene fell silent instantly. Perhaps knowing there was no way out, they would live the rest of their lives under condemnation. Lance got up and crazily grabbed my neck. You want me dead? I'll take you to hell with me. I couldn't breathe from being choked. The next moment, Ashley lifted a chair and smashed it hard on Lance's back. He fell heavily to the ground, trying to get up. At that moment, a group of armed police officers burst in through the door. In just a few moves, they subdued Lance. Finally, it was over. Chapter 12. The court's verdict. Lance lost everything, all the savings he had accumulated in his early life were confiscated by the court, and a portion was compensated to me. Usually, it was my salary that covered our daily expenses. I always thought he must have saved quite a bit of money, never imagining he had secretly stashed away $20 million. A significant portion of that was research funding from the government. Once this matter was uncovered, the sentence doubled and increased. Due to Ashley's testimony matching mine, Lance was also charged with domestic violence and attempted murder. He was sentenced to a full 17 years. Ashley's reputation was tarnished as well. From a respected scientific researcher, she transformed into a homewrecker that everyone condemned. But the one who garnered the most attention was me. I received over $5 million. I renovated my home to my liking and opened a law firm right across the street, specializing in resolving marital conflicts. I shed my old image, no longer hiding my capabilities, and faced life and work with all my strength. I was no longer a victim, nor could I be considered gentle or kind. I never thought that one day, I would confront the darkness within me. Not like the female lead in a drama, enduring pain to gain the pity of the male lead. Happiness is something you fight for, not something handed to you by others. Everyone says I've changed. I've become very assertive. I've become proactive, sharp, and able to easily resolve thorny issues. I now have a prominent position and reputation. Sometimes, I think back to that incident by the lake. But I no longer dwell on right or wrong. Instead, I delve deep into human nature. I am who I am. My name is Mary.